Hello everybody and welcome to Forever Sports, and we are 2 days out from Rassie Erasmus's team announcement for the weekend against Italy, and lots to chat about with regards to how the team might look and kind of also some of the attitude and some of the questions we want to sort of almost answer with the team selection itself. And I think the big news is obviously we've got 3 tests left in the year. We've got Ireland next week. We've got to pick our strongest 23 that we believe can beat Ireland. We've got to find that 23 players, a combination that is going to get a job in Dublin, for the first time, in Rassie Erasmus' tenure. It's the only place he has not won is in Ireland against Ireland. Now, that being said, again, we've then got a match after that against Wales, which falls outside the test window. So players like an Archie Snyman will not be available. I imagine that obviously we've got the agreements with the URC sides that those players will be able to be available. Usually we also got an agreement with the Japanese players for them to be available as well. However, any players based in Europe, for example, will not be eligible. So, like a Jean Klein, for example, will not be eligible. Archie Snyman won't be eligible. And it remains to be seen how eligible, the Japanese-based players are going to be. So now we've got to sort of turn our attention to 2 things. First of all, we got to win this weekend, obviously, so you can't just do a complete wholesale, changes and where there's going to be no sort of continuity and no sort of, I'm not trying to look at the work, but no sort of form, for example. You've got to try and select a few combinations that are playing well because we still need to have a bit of momentum. At the end of the day, Italy are coming off a very impressive result against Australia, and it's not the Italy that we played against mid-year. It will be a much tougher test this weekend. I'm anticipating a much tougher test this weekend. We know that we've got a squad where we could completely rotate the side and still probably beat Italy if we play to our capacity, but we can't take them lightly and then stumble because we've got to achieve 2 things. First of all, we've got to make sure that we get the result this weekend. We've also then got to obviously try things and keep building. And the reason that we're having this 5 tests, series in the end of the year, a 5-test stretch, is to try and build that depth, to try and keep building our game plan, the way we want to play, and improving our structures and. So it's quite a big balancing act, isn't it? With regards to finding an opportunity, finding a chance to play players like a Andre Pollard, possibly a Kane Moody, an Adel van der Merwe, an Ethan Hooker, a Ben Jason Dixon, a Jean Klein, a Franco Mostert, a Zachary Porthen, who else is around here? And Morty van den Berg. But at the same time, we also want to build what we're doing as a team. I think it was going to be a case of if we had lost this past weekend, we might have seen a different sort of side. We kind of saw that mid-year where I wouldn't say panic necessarily, but we did definitely have opportunities where we, I think, wanted to play players, but because we lost results, because we didn't quite get what we wanted to get, we had to change our plans. And off the back of the weekend, for example, getting that result means that I think we will stick to what the sort of intended team was. And that's why I think we're going to see Andre Parr this weekend. We're going to see Morty van den Berg. We're going to see Adel van der Merwe. We're going to see Ben Jason Dixon. We're going to see, I think we might see Zachary Porthen. I really do think we might see him in play, to be honest. I think we'll definitely see him against Wales, given the fact that Thomas Toy likely to be unavailable. For example, I'd like to see Asenat Ntlabakanye this weekend. I'd really like to see Bern Fenter get given another opportunity. I was quite impressed with him last week, got subbed early. And I think that he deserves the opportunity to go out this weekend and continue building on that performance. Obviously, they saw something, and I think they probably saw something in the analytics that we might not have seen. Somebody mentioned the fact that it was a line-out. I'm not entirely convinced, but he was an interesting substitution to come off early, and I think that I was upset for him because I thought that he was holding his end of the stick quite well from a scrummaging perspective, and then got subbed. So there's lots of different ways you can kind of approach this weekend. You can kind of go combinations, so you could go like Jean Klein, Archie Snyman, 2 players who have played together quite a lot. You could go with an Andre Estes an inside, Kane Moody outside centre combination. Will we see Damien Williams to shift to inside centre and Kane Moody outside centre potentially, and give somebody like a Sasha a go at full back, where he had to finish the game last weekend? Maybe we're going to sit there and say, right, let's see him start at fullback and let's see how we can grow that kind of combination. Do we see Mike Liebach start? Do we see Andre Pollard start? Do we see Morne van den Berg start versus do we see Grant Williams start and Morne van den Berg off the bench? Again, if we're talking about combinations, do we see Grant and Money and Morne and Andre on the bench? Are we going to see those sort of combinations? Are we going to see an Edward van der Merwe, Ethan Hooker, Damian Williams at the back three? From a loose chair point of view, might we see a Markovic start and Ben Jason Dixon and Jasper Wiese situation as well? So there's lots of different ways we can kind of go with it. And that's what I think makes it so exciting. I mean, I think, ironically, last week was obviously more of an exciting team prediction with regards to being a bigger match, inverted commas, but it was probably also more... it was probably more straightforward from my picks point of view. And John is talking about saying my picks are crazy. And I think that's what's going to be so exciting about this week is that it's going to, and when we do our show tomorrow where we pick the team, it's going to be a very interesting team to try and pick because there's so many different sort of factors we have to, sometimes we have to we forget that we've got such a big squad, for example, and that we've got to get in certain players that haven't played a lot of rugby. I think that's what's going to make this weekend very, very cool. If you get 15 out of 15 for my picks this week, credit to you because I don't think anyone really knows exactly what we're going to see. Even from a bench split point of view, 5-3, 6-2, we won't see a 7-1, but I think 5-3 makes a lot of sense. But I don't think I can confidently pick too many picks. I think that Bowen Fenter starts in the number 1 jersey is probably about one of the few players I think was pretty nailed on. I think Jasper Wiese in the number 8 jersey is pretty nailed on. After that, it could be a completely brand new 15, in all honesty, because we're not sure if they're going to treat this really, really well in terms of, must-win game, can't afford to drop this and maybe rotate against Wales. Maybe there's a certain amount of we want to build momentum going into Ireland. We don't want players to, take a week off and then not be up to scratch in a week's time. But there's also obviously going to be injury concerns. We saw Oxen Chair going down in a match with a lot of people saying, should he really have been playing? And there is also that possibility. You go and play, I don't know, let's say a Jasper Wiese this weekend, he gets injured and all of a sudden you don't really have number 8 cover that you'd like for the game next week. So there's lots of different factors to consider. Now I'm going to start a poll asking you, who do you think is going to start at 10? I think that's going to be the fun selection. Who starts at 10 this weekend? Because Andre Pollard hasn't played for the Boks much in the last few games. Money has been coming off the bench. Sasha has been getting the majority of the game time. In fact, I actually want to go look at exactly how many games Andre Pollard's been played this weekend. And look at it over here. Here we go. This will be one of the few times where he's been involved in the squad and played so few times, in all honesty. So if we have a look at, he's only played 5 tests this year, and we have played 12. He's been available for all of them, just by the way. He's not been injured. He's been available for all of them. I'm trying to think if he has. No, he's been available for all of them, but he's only played 5 tests, of which he's only started 3. So I lied to you. He's played 4 tests this season. 4 tests. He's played 4 tests season. He started 3 out of those 4, coming one off the bench. So he's played fewer than 200 minutes for the Boks. In fact, just over 200 minutes for the Boks. Compared to Mani Liebach, for example, and Sasha, who have played a lot more. And I don't think that was on too many people's bingo cards, that Andre Pollard would be, will play the fewest amount of minutes of our 3 fly halves this year. But it goes to show that we are trying to build this new brand of rugby. We're trying to get to this, sort of Tony Ball situation. And as a result, Mani Liebach, for example, has played 7 tests so far this year, of which he started 2 of them and then come off the bench. And I think that, hang on, this is the wrong season, actually. I'll take it all back. There we go. This is the team. He's played 8 tests. 8 tests this year. Who would have thought that, 7 tests. One was against Barbarians. I'll get it there eventually. 7 tests this year, though. And he started two of them, started against Italy and Australia, came off the bench, but he's become up to bench to such good effect, especially against New Zealand, where he played over an hour, and obviously we won that game. Came off the bench both times against Argentina. Over the past weekend was very, very good off the bench against France, where he got 27 minutes against Japan. So he's been playing a lot of matches this year, but not as much game time maybe as you'd like. You look at, for example, Sasha, and he's played many minutes for the Box so far this year, and I think that'll be interesting to sort of see, does this now an opportunity to rotate him, or are they going to just keep playing? Because he's basically played almost every single test. He missed the one Italy test, and the one Australia test, but he played both tests against Australia, one off the bench, one starting. I mean, with New Zealand, he played both tests against Argentina, both starting. He started against Japan, and he started against France. So he's played a lot of minutes for the Box. I mean, he's very quietly and unassumedly, got himself to 18 test matches. And he's playing with so much confidence that he's just become undroppable. But at the same time, you want to be able to give your other players an opportunity when the opportunity presents itself, which is this weekend. So Genre says, do you think the Italy's win over Australia at the Springboks will take the match more serious? And asking him Pollard to start on the bench. Jason says, I think rest a few players for this test, also give some other guys game time. Christian says, I'm sure there must be changes. Guys are going to need a rest after that France test before Ireland. I mean, in theory, what we've understood is that there are no injuries to speak of. And that's obviously a really good thing. But yeah, I think it's a good point in terms of guys going to be sore. It was a big shift over the weekend. Guys are going to be hurting, and there'll be certain people who will need a bit of a break. Some people obviously might recover better, and so we'll only have probably a better idea after yesterday, probably today, really where the squad is with regards to their fitness, for example, their conditioning, their workload. So some people like Siklis, who's played he only played a half last weekend, for example, is probably more ready to go than somebody like a Jasper Wiese maybe, or a Peter Steph Toy, who went the distance, had to play a really big physical game. And you also have to, for example, obviously track the workload over the past season and see who's played a lot of rugby and who needs to potentially sit out and who needs to get more opportunities. So there's so many different parts to that. Personally, I would like to see Monie Liebach start. I think that he's been playing really well off the bench, and I'd love to see him get going from the get-go. And I'd probably look to bring Pollard off the bench. The question is, who does he start with? Do we start with Grant Williams and really try and take on the Italians up front nice and early? Do we start with Morne van den Berg, for example, and build our innings and then look to bring Grant on the second half and continue that kind of impact role? At the same time, there's a certain amount of maybe Monie Liebach off the bench is the role, and he needs to continue to understanding what that looks like and how to make that kind of impact off the bench, how to see off games. I don't think it's a coincidence that we've started seeing him coming off the bench and having to really work on his game management, because now we've got, for example, a fly half who not only understands how to start a game, and maybe that's where they're saying that maybe Sasha lacks a bit of experience to see out a game, which now Monie is starting to show, and vice versa. So there's a lot of different aspects to it to sort of go through. I have no clue. Says Pollard start, Monie on the bench. Christian says, I really want to see Potty start with Sasha at 15. Mikey says, I think Andre will start Monie off the bench with Sasha possibly at fullback if Rassie wants to give him more game time while rotating his other fly halves. Kirkby reckons 9 Williams, 10 Monie, 11 Hooker, 12 Willemse, 30 Moody, 14 Van der Merwe, 15 Colby. Would love to see this backline. I would also love to see Damon have a run at 12. The only problem is I'm not sure. I mean, Colby at 15 will be fine. I mean, I don't think we'd lose a game. We'd ever lose a game, for example, him at 15. But I just think that, I don't really see her long-term as a 15 option. Personally, I don't think we get the same impact. But I'd really like to see Edel van der Merwe get a run this weekend, and I'd really like to see Ethan Hooker get a run this weekend. So if you want to give Cheslin Colby a run at 15, this weekend's probably it. And the nice thing is, if you had Dane Willemse at 12, for example, or again, you can put Sasha at 15. But if you want Dane Willemse at 12, the nice thing is he can shift back to 15 if needs be. If things aren't going well, for example, we can shift him back and say, right, it was a nice idea. It hasn't really worked. Let's move him back and let's put him at 15. But I do think that we probably need to explore our 15s options, given the fact that we only took one out and out 15. This weekend will probably be a good weekend to do it. Unless they're just basically saying, well, we only need 115 because we're going to back Damian Williamson across the 4 tests. Obviously, Damian, he was injured for that first test against Japan. He was fine this weekend. And then all of a sudden, he's back. And obviously, I think, will ideally play a sort of role in the next 3 tests now. CS says Poly 10, Williams 12. Christian says, I didn't have the best test. I think Rassie will give him another go. And Just Rock Up says, I reckon it'll be very much mostly a Bulls pack to start. Well, you could have a Bulls front row, I suppose. You could have Gerard Steenekamp, Johan Krobelaar, and Wilco Low. No Bulls locks at this stage. But yeah, a Bulls front, I suppose that you're not here, obviously, could start. And the loose forwards, Markov starting at 6. And I think we'll see Franco Master this weekend. I don't know where. I don't know if it's 7 or if it's 5 or off the bench. But I do think we'll see him. They get them all involved across the different, across the entire squad, because there's so many people who need game time. And Franco Master was somebody who I said against Japan was under the Verticom's a little bit of pressure, and I think really stepped up. So I think that they'll probably look to try and give another opportunity. And then we've got a big test. Obviously, next week's going to be the big call. Who plays against Ireland? Because, for example, you go and play a Andre Esterhuizen and Kane Moody this weekend, or Dave Williamson and Kane Moody, and they go absolutely ballistic. There'll be a temptation to play them against Ireland, I think. Maybe they've already decided they're going to play against Ireland. This is the one thing. We also know that they're not going to be scared of playing younger players against Ireland. The fact that we went and beat New Zealand with Kane Moody starting at 13, with Sasha starting at 10, with Ethan Hooker starting at 11. Maybe that is very much the chat that they already said before the game, right? This is our France team, but against Ireland, we're going to see Kane Moody. We're going to have Ethan Hooker on the side. We're going to have Ruud Nokia starting in the number 5 jersey with, maybe the plan was Lewis at number 4. Now Lewis potentially going to be banned. Obviously, we'll know a bit more about his hearing today when he has it, and kind of what the ban's going to be. So that'll also obviously complicate things. But I think that one selection I think we definitely will see this weekend is Jean Klein will start in the 4 jersey, or at least be on the bench. And I'm looking forward to it, because I think, we're talking about the fact that people are saying that Ian doesn't have quite the same impact that he traditionally had, and that maybe, this is a new era where he's just not quite the same player that he once was. And if that's the case, well, then who's the next option? Who are your other options at 4? Jean Klein, for me, has always been the best second option at number 4. Salman Murat's never really managed to impress like that. Kobus Visa hasn't really get the chance at fairness, but also hasn't really impressed. We've seen Lotte Jager at 4. Arke Sneman can start at 4, but I don't think that there's that out-and-out, sort of tight-head lock that brings the brunt of the Etzebeth. I think the best we've got is Jean Klein, and due to injuries, we haven't seen him. Hopefully, we get to see him, though, this weekend. Michael says, Benjes Dixon has to play Shirley. Christian reckons him at 7, and so it's on the bench. Kidsinico says, what are we thinking at 8? If Jasper gets a rest, maybe Sia or Kwaka with Marco and Dixon. And Robert says, 1 Steenekamp, 2 Krobelaar, 3 Toy, 4 Snyman, 5 Nokia, 6 Van Staden, 7 Mostert, and 8 Visa. The Crow Tips saying, hey Stevie, Italy, my favorite. Hey, well, look at them cooking against Australia. My boys. Tyreek reckons that we should try save the likes of Colby and Kurt Lawrence. Wouldn't want an Ox repeat. Pete has got an interesting theory saying Pollard is signed for R360 and is now acting as coach until he leaves. I have no clue. Says off topic, but why do you think Sorry is opposing the Manchester Rugby League when its aim is to give opportunities to the players that fall out of the system? Probably because they want to have monopoly over all rugby in the country, and any breakaway league that they just look at as a threat is I don't really know, to be honest. I mean, with what they're paying players, you're not going to lose big players to them. I think the salaries are 15 to 30,000 rand, so you're not going to lose big players to the Nzanzi Rugby League. And from my understanding, they don't even want to try and go this zone. They basically said that it's they want to be I think the big thing they're going to try and do is compete with Currie Cup. So they're going to go after your Pumas players, Griquas players, EP players, your border players, for example, and those kind of will be the chat. It's a very interesting league. There's some, there's like teams in the Vaal, there's teams in, I think, Mossel Bay, there's teams in Potawatomi, for example. I don't think it's going to be massive. And the problem is that Sorry reckons it's going to wreck their club structure. That's what they're worried about. Now, in theory, it grows our player base, the Mzansi Rugby League, because it incentivizes more players to kind of play professional rugby, for example. Will it, will it collapse the club system? It'll definitely impact it, and that's probably where the issues are. The fact that all these clubs, for example, feed into the union. So this isn't going to be about affecting the Bulls, Sharks, Lions, and Stormers. This is about what does the Mzansi Rugby League do to Griffins, to your Bulldogs, your your Leopards, those sort of sides, those sort of unions, because they're all part of the 50-man. There's 50 unions within SA Rugby, and those sort of other unions, EPs, for example, even Boland and the likes of that, those are members. And I think that's where they're very worried about the Mzansi Rugby League, is the fact that they're going to lose a lot of the club players that feed into your Leopards, Pumas, Griffins. I personally don't care if they do lose, because I think that at the end of the day, you've got players who can barely afford to put food on the table. They're having to play sort of part-time for Griffins, Leopards, even, I think Griffins and Pumas to a certain degree. Some of them are also, most of them are professional rugby players, but some of them also have to have sort of side hustles and the likes of that, because they just don't have the money. Now, if you've got a youngster who's 20 years old, 21 years old, he hasn't gotten a contract at one of the top unions, but he can go and play in this Mzansi Rugby League at 30 grand a month. That's not terrible for him. And I think, the biggest problem is that the reason that they don't want it is because they're not part of it, and they don't want to be part of it, for example. But apparently, I think what the frustrating thing is that they want to work with SA Rugby, and that's what they said. So Ronaldo Bothma, for example, has he stepped away from it. But and he said as follows. He said, we aim to work with SA Rugby and help fill a gap. Some teams don't even have an under 19 or under 21 sides, and some players only get 5 games a year. We want to create opportunities for them to play more, and then the unions can use our players later. He said that the league has enough funding from foreign investors to run for its first 3 years. He's since then resigned, but they're taking the SA Rugby to court, to be honest, with regards to the statement that, and basically it was quite a low move, to be honest. SA Rugby and my players came back and said that there wasn't sanctioned, therefore it's not going to be, it's not safe, inverted commas, and that because it's not sanctioned, any players that play for them will risk being banned for ever playing for SA Rugby Alliance side. So that means if you go play in Mzansi Rugby League, for example, then you risk never being picked for a Lions, a Sharks, the Bulls, etc. But yeah, so going to some of the comments there, SJW says, I wonder if you will see a new cap for this match. Maybe it's time to start thinking of the future. Ivan Oakley says, off topic, why do you think... sorry, that was the one I was talking about now. Christian says, I think Jean-Claude and Archie played together against Ireland, either starting or on the bench. Jake will get a run against Italy. Jean says, with this type of game, and Rassie's crazy mind, you might be dethroned at the top of the My Picks League. Are you mad? I'm on a generational run here. A generational run. Let me pull up the My Picks leagues. I'm going to show you guys the generational run I'm currently on, because you got to put some respect on my name here, people. This has been what a time. What a time. So the big question is, have you guys done your picks? Because if you haven't, you've still got a bit of time. You've got 2 days. But if you haven't, register on My Picks to predict your Bok team and score predictions and player ratings. So let's talk about my generational run here, because it's quite something. It is quite something. We've got a couple of different leagues at the moment, and hopefully you guys will join them. For example, we've got a league for the Springbok games for this November, just the Springbok games. We've then got a league for all of the games in the Autumn Nation series. So your Island games, the likes of that. And then we've got a league for predicting the team itself. So if you're foreign to the concept, then make sure you go and register on My Picks and get involved. And this is the generational run that Stevie P is currently sitting on. Give me 2 seconds. Let me just make sure this is all nice and ready to show you guys what's cooking. And what is cooking is that Steve is cooking. Steve is cooking, and you guys better start stepping up. Because at the moment, it's a bit childish, really. Because I'll tell you what it is. It is lonely at the top. Ladies and gentlemen, this is... Let's start with it. Yeah, shall we start with this one? Here we go. This is the Forever Sports November test score predictor. So predict the scores for international friendly games for all teams. Who's number one? Look who's number one there. A little 6.1 average points per game. 61 points across the first 10 games. At the top. Lonely at the top. And then. We've then got the just the block games. You know, this is now where we just predict the block games of this November series. So this is now the Springbok, just the Springbok games. And this is where I'm tied at the top. So when you're watching, I'm coming for your title there. You guys, by the way, are sitting at 14 points. Not a terrible result. So a shout out to the people who've actually locked in those predictions. You actually got yourself third. We had somebody over the weekend, and that was the one that they predicted. And then we've got the team predictor. So that's predicting, Rassie's team and putting your Rassie's cap on and seeing if you can predict. And what would you know? Look who's at the top. I tell you, not just a pretty face out here on the stream, people. No more rugby, dogs. Back me. So if you guys would like to try and chase me down, by the way, the FS community, you guys are there. You guys are there with the team predictor, not doing dreadfully. But the generational run continues. We're topping. Well, joint top of one, topping the other two. So there's the target on my back. Come and get me. Kajul says, gonna watch this weekend's game in Turin, hoping to see Sasha perform in person. Enjoy that, Kajul. And but if you would like to, feel free to share us some clips and stuff like that of your time there. It'd be cool to see what it's like on the ground. And then SVG says, start with Williams, Liebach, Hooker, Esterhazen, Moody, Kurt Lance, and Colby at fullback, bench, Vandenberg, Pollard, and Willemse. Christian says, come on, Steve, stop patting yourself in the back, start talking rugby. I mean, it is talking rugby. It's talking about people who know their rugby. And evidently, I am Apollo. I've got the gift of sight out here. Also, I'm so bad at prediction games. I'm dreadful. I gave up on playing them a long time ago because I was so bad. And yet, look at me now. So I've got to enjoy it while it lasts, because this is like a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for me. Anyway, I was asking earlier, who do you think is going to start? 64% reckon that Andre Pollard will get the nod and start in the number 10 jersey, with Marley Liebach behind him at 30%. No one really backing the Sashvam Zulu shout to start in the number 10 jersey. I think obviously we'll see him against Ireland is probably the thinking, unless the conditions in Dublin might dictate a Andre Pollard, for example. Because the conditions at this stage, from what I understand, are looking okay for this weekend. I think it's possible rain, but I don't think massive rain, was my understanding. Not particularly hot, but supposedly dry. Unless, that might change. Dublin weather, obviously, next week, it's only going to get worse kind of as we get into November, isn't it? And they, for example, do have lots of rain predicted this weekend. And it's getting cold. So that why it will be interesting next weekend if we might see Andre Pollard kind of go to the number 10 and play a bit more of a 10-man rugby, wet, weather-friendly style. But we're going to wrap up there, people. Thank you very much for joining me for a bit of lunchtime chat. We'll be back live tomorrow. Once again, we're going to pick our team. And then obviously we'll be live on Thursday for the team announcement itself. So please do smash a like on the video. Please do subscribe to the channel as well. Please also do consider becoming a member. Trying to get up to 300 members by the end of the year. So please do continue to show that that support. I think we've got about less than 90 to go. which is about 2 to 3 a day. So if you haven't, please do consider becoming a member, and we will be doing a dedicated part after the team announcement tomorrow to our members, as well as when we do our player ratings. We usually then do as well a dedicated section for the members to do a bit of a Q&A. Herman says, so how about thinking like this? Which players we need for the Ireland game that we will not want to lose in the Italy game through injury or suspension? For example, Willem, Sasha, Norkia. I think it's a very good factor to sort of add in. But yeah, please just smash like on the way out. Please do subscribe to the channel as well. And I'll